The Galactic Council assembled, a grand arena filled with representatives from every corner of the known galaxy. This council, the galaxy's self-proclaimed guardians of peace, governed through delicate agreements, each race upholding a tenuous unity to keep war at bay. The council's hall shimmered with technology that transcended species, languages translated in real time, cultural tensions masked beneath layers of diplomatic polish. But beneath that polish, fractures ran deep. It was a strained peace, more truce than alliance, a web of alliances where each species eyed the others warily. Among them, humanity had always been an outlier, a species newly arrived on the galactic stage, brimming with potential and resourcefulness that some in the council viewed with envy, others with outright suspicion. Yet humanity had sent one of its best to represent them, Ambassador Alexander Hayes, a man known for his deep commitment to peace, his resilience, and his ability to bridge even the widest cultural gaps. To humanity, Hayes symbolized hope, a belief that their future in this vast galaxy could be forged not with weapons, but with words. Hayes had dedicated years to the Council, winning respect through patience and level-headed negotiations, even from those who begrudged humanity's rising influence. He was a familiar presence in the council halls, a beacon of humanity's willingness to find its place among the stars, bound by the rules and structures of interstellar diplomacy. But despite his steady hand, there were factions within the council that saw humanity as a risk, an unpredictable newcomer with a capacity for rapid advancement that unsettled the galaxy's old order. On this day, Hayes was addressing the council, speaking on trade routes that had become vulnerable to piracy along humanity's newly settled borders. The holographic transmission of his figure beamed across countless member worlds, an earnest voice championing the cause of protection for all vulnerable colonies, human and alien alike. His words rang out, confident yet measured, reflecting the kind of dedication humanity hoped would inspire trust. Then, without warning, a high-pitched whine sliced through the air, and Hayes's voice cut off mid-sentence. The counselors watched in stunned silence as a single laser bolt struck him, straight to the chest, his face contorted in surprise and pain before he fell. The transmission flickered and died, but not before the galaxy witnessed the exact moment the life left Ambassador Hayes's eyes. A moment of stunned silence enveloped the council chamber. Then, chaos erupted. Representatives scrambled in panic, guards deployed, and alarms blared. Every species reacted differently to the sudden violence, some with horror, others with calculated silence, assessing what this might mean for the precarious balance of power. The members had witnessed disagreements, even altercations, but nothing like this. This was no mere diplomatic scandal. It was an assassination within the very heart of galactic governance, a direct attack on one of humanity's most revered figures. Human representatives, barely processing the loss, demanded an immediate lockdown, insisting on a swift and thorough investigation. Hayes had been under the Council's protection, and his death was more than a personal loss. It was a breach of the Council's promise to safeguard every delegate. The human delegation's voices rang out, their grief underscored by a growing anger, demanding answers from the Council's security team. Yet, from the Council, there was no immediate response, only vague reassurances and deflections. Council members looked at one another, unwilling to take responsibility, quick to distance themselves from the event as if Hayes's death was simply an unfortunate anomaly rather than a clear sign of failure. As the hours passed, humanity's shock began to harden into suspicion. While humanity's delegation pressed for transparency, the Council responded with frustrating ambiguity, citing procedural delays and diplomatic protocols. The Council's investigation, if it could be called that, stalled on bureaucracy. Some counselors even suggested that the assassination could have been an isolated, unprovoked act, an unfortunate incident that shouldn't disrupt the Council's work. To the humans, these were empty words that only fueled their skepticism. In the absence of real answers, Whispers began circulating among humanity's delegation. Was this an act of targeted aggression, an intentional elimination of one of humanity's most effective diplomats? Certain council members had always viewed humanity's rise with resentment. Could this have been their opportunity to remind humans of their place, a cold and calculated message delivered in blood? These questions swirled unanswered, and with each passing hour, the outrage in the human delegation grew more palpable. Ambassador Hayes had been more than just a diplomat. He was a symbol of humanity's willingness to engage in this complex, often hostile, galactic community. He embodied their hope that cooperation could lead to shared prosperity. His death was not just a personal tragedy, but a betrayal of everything humanity had trusted in the Council. Yet here was the Council, deflecting, stalling, and offering nothing but hollow condolences as Hayes's killers remained at large. Humanity's representatives began to see the Council in a different light. Where once they saw a governing body that held the galaxy together, now they saw a facade of unity, a system more concerned with self-preservation than truth or justice. The Council, the very institution that had welcomed them, now seemed to be complicit, either through negligence or indifference. And with every passing moment, it became clear, if humanity was going to receive justice, they would have to demand it, on their own terms. Humanity's call for justice echoed through the halls of the Galactic Council with a force that made every delegate sit a little straighter. This wasn't a routine request. It was a demand. Humanity, united and unyielding, called for an immediate investigation into Ambassador Hayes's assassination. They requested full access to the Council's security footage, private records, and any relevant intelligence. To the humans, transparency was non-negotiable. Hayes had been under Council protection, and his murder on their watch required nothing less than full accountability. At first, the Council representatives offered what they thought might pacify humanity: polished condolences, assurances of support, and phrases that carefully avoided any hint of responsibility. The words tragic loss and unfortunate incident circulated, but when pressed for real answers, they spoke only of inconclusive evidence and hinted at a long, comprehensive investigation. The humans saw through it. They weren't here for empty sympathies or the glacial pace of intergalactic politics. They wanted answers, and they wanted them now. Behind closed doors, the Council was divided. Representatives from influential species, like the Thalarians and the Viridians, hesitated. A deep investigation could expose uncomfortable truths, unmasking the fragility of their security systems and potentially stirring unrest among member worlds. The idea of making an enemy of humanity was daunting, but the political fallout from a thorough inquiry felt equally dangerous. And so, rather than focusing on justice, the Council's concern became self-preservation. Human representatives watched furious, as these powerful species seemed more interested in their own image than in addressing Hayes's assassination. Days passed, each one eroding the humans' remaining patience. With the Council stalled in bureaucracy, humanity's delegation grew increasingly vocal. Led by General Elena Kimura, a steadfast figure who had risen as a natural leader in the crisis, they delivered a pointed message. If progress wasn't made soon, humanity would withdraw from the Council's proceedings entirely. To Kimura, a superficial investigation would be as insulting as no investigation at all. She spoke bluntly, her message reverberating through the chamber. If the Council cannot deliver justice, then humanity has no place within its walls. The Council members sensed the mounting pressure, but each response seemed more tone-deaf than the last. They floated the idea of a tribute to honor Hayes, perhaps a ceremony where Council members could recite well-crafted speeches and lay wreaths. To them, this seemed a respectful offer, a diplomatic solution to calm humanity's fury. But to the human delegation, this was nothing short of an insult. A memorial? They didn't want empty gestures. They wanted action. Hayes's death was more than a tragic loss. It was a violation of everything humanity had trusted in the Council. For them, a tribute would only mask the Council's unwillingness to pursue the truth. Humanity's anger became palpable, radiating through the Council like a living thing. The Council members watched unsettled, as it became clear that humanity was united in their outrage. They weren't simply grieving, they were rallying, driven by a shared sense of betrayal and injustice. General Kimura's voice resonated in each council session, unwavering, as she continued to press for accountability. She was done with diplomatic niceties and tired of phrases that smoothed over the truth. To her, the council was failing not only Hayes, but the very ideals it claimed to uphold. The pressure weighed on humanity's representatives too. Internally, they debated their options. Some argued that pushing further might irreparably damage their standing in the galaxy, risking alliances that humanity had only just begun to build. But Kimura countered every concern, insisting that without justice, any alliance was empty. She declared that humanity could not be bought with hollow words and false sympathy, and she urged her people to stand firm. If the Council's allegiance was based on convenience rather than principle, humanity was better off on its own. As tensions reached a breaking point, certain Council members began to show unease. They recognized that humanity would not simply return to the fold with time. They had ignited a fire that was not easily extinguished. And the Council members who understood humanity's resolve started to fear what could come next. If humanity turned away, what would that mean for the galaxy? This question haunted the Council chambers, a silent reminder that the humans they had invited into the fold might not need the Council at all. In their final attempts to placate humanity, the Council floated a formal inquiry. But the terms were toothless, a gesture more symbolic than substantive. The investigators would be appointed by those same Council species whose security protocols had already failed. This farce, masquerading as action, was humanity's final straw. The human delegation dismissed it outright, making it clear that only a full investigation with neutral oversight would be acceptable. Anything less would be seen as a cover-up. Kimura and her team demanded more than appeasement. They demanded respect. For the first time, the Council felt the weight of humanity's refusal. Here was a species that would not be swayed by pageantry or half-truths. Humanity's unity, fueled by grief and a thirst for justice, was unlike anything the Council had anticipated. And as they observed this unyielding stance, many realized that humanity was no ordinary species, content to follow silently. They were a force that demanded acknowledgement, and in the Council's failure to meet that demand, a shift began, a sense that humanity might be the first to reject the Council's authority outright. Where once the Council had seen a fresh, cooperative race, they now saw a relentless force of conviction. Humanity's demand was simple. Either the Council took Hayes' death seriously, or they would face the consequences of a humanity unbound, willing to walk away from a system that refused to honor its own principles. It was a statement that, while unspoken, echoed throughout the galaxy. Humanity's patience had run dry. The Council's endless delay tactics, its evasive responses, and superficial gestures had led humanity to a clear conclusion. The Council either could not or would not deliver justice. As a final measure, humanity issued an ultimatum: give a genuine response within 72 hours, or face their permanent departure from the Council. The ultimatum sparked a ripple of concern throughout the Council. Some members took it as mere posturing. After all, no species had ever willingly walked away from the Council, the highest governing body of interstellar peace and order. Yet the human delegation made it clear that they were no longer willing to compromise. General Kimura, with her usual calm intensity, delivered the message: if justice is an inconvenience for the Council, then humanity will not be bound by its laws. We will find our own way forward. The Council's leaders tried to buy more time, proposing procedural hurdles, raising points of order, and delaying votes. It was the same evasive maneuvering that had stalled the investigation since the beginning. But humanity's patience was at an end, and with the deadline ticking down, they saw no purpose in waiting any longer. On the third day, the human delegation left the council chambers and never returned. The council was blindsided. Rumors circulated about humanity's intentions, each more alarming than the last. In the conference rooms, representatives of other species whispered anxiously about humanity's potential for retaliation. Despite their relatively short time on the interstellar scene, humans had already established themselves as a force to be reckoned with. Their technological advancements, military organization, and raw determination made them a uniquely unpredictable variable. And for the first time, the Council realized what it might mean to be on the wrong side of humanity's ire. General Kimura made the formal announcement, her words ringing out in the quiet chamber as though each sentence was a verdict. She called the Council out, condemning it as a hollow body that could no longer uphold its own values. She didn't mask her contempt, nor did she downplay the betrayal. The Council speaks of unity and peace, she said, but turns its back on those principles when inconvenient. Ambassador Hayes stood here as a symbol of trust. You violated that trust. Humanity will not stand among those who mock justice. Her voice was steady, unwavering. The human delegation followed her, filing out with calm dignity, their expressions resolute. Watching this, the council representatives were left speechless. What had seemed like idle threats had become reality, and the weight of it settled on each delegate with a growing sense of dread. Humanity's departure was not just a blow to the council's authority, but a warning that their system might no longer be unassailable. Humanity had been among the most cooperative and forward-thinking of the new members, and their refusal to yield suggested a courage and determination that no species had anticipated. The thought of humans choosing their own path, with their formidable abilities and relentless resolve, sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned diplomats. Beyond the chamber, the galaxy watched in awe and apprehension. Humanity's refusal to back down echoed across worlds, a powerful declaration that integrity could not be traded away, even in the halls of the Council. News networks broadcast the scene of their departure, and the sight of humans walking out unbowed and undeterred sparked discussions in every corner of the galactic community. Council members, once dismissive of humanity's demands, now scrambled to salvage the situation. They appealed to their allies, hoping to curb the fallout. But the human response had stirred something beyond simple political discomfort. It had planted doubt. Within days, several allied species reached out to humanity, some discreetly, others openly, expressing solidarity or concern. A few, deeply unsettled by the Council's handling of the incident, began questioning their own ties to a governing body that would turn a blind eye to injustice. The Council found itself on the defensive, hastily trying to reassure these allies that it would take steps to reform and rebuild trust. Yet, humanity's exit had left a lasting mark. For all its talk of peace, the Council had shown itself unwilling to protect one of its own, and that realization sent tremors through the alliances it had long taken for granted. The humans, meanwhile, made their position clear. They would not be swayed by half-hearted overtures or superficial gestures. Humanity had a code, a dedication to its values that could not be compromised, and they would uphold it, with or without the Council's sanction. The Council's betrayal had cemented their resolve to protect their own interests independently, whatever the consequences might be. And so, as humanity withdrew, the Council was left to reckon with a sobering new reality, a galaxy where humanity would forge its own path, unconstrained by the bureaucracy or hypocrisy of interstellar politics. The message had been delivered, not with weapons or threats, but with the unwavering courage to stand apart. The human delegation's exit from the Council had barely settled before humanity pivoted from diplomacy to defense. Knowing that the Council might view their departure as an act of defiance, humanity wasted no time in mobilizing its fleets, a massive but methodical operation spanning Earth and its furthest colonies. Orders were dispatched with swift precision, and the machinery of Earth's military preparedness came to life. Defense platforms were fortified, border outposts braced for possible incursions, and fleets assembled into strategic formations, each move calculated and efficient. Within hours, humanity's command network buzzed with coordinated energy. Unlike the Council's often chaotic responses, humanity's defense plans were laid out with meticulous forethought. They anticipated potential hostilities, analyzing each Council species for any signs of movement, any shifts in patrol routes, or any heightened military presence near human territories. Unlike their counterparts, human leadership had prepared for this day. The protocols that humanity had long kept dormant were now enacted, securing every frontier and deploying fleets where they'd be most effective. On Earth and throughout the colonies, news of this mobilization met with approval rather than fear. Rather than seeing it as an escalation, people saw it as a necessary response. They understood that the Council's refusal to seek justice for Hayes had revealed more than a single failure. It had shown a system that would not protect its own when doing so was difficult. Civilians and soldiers alike rallied behind their leaders. Humanity's unity grew stronger, fueled by a collective will to defend their values and lives, no matter the cost. Across human worlds, they wore their decision as a badge of honor, standing firmly by the message that they would not be passive, nor would they be victims. The impact of humanity's withdrawal rippled far beyond Earth. Close allies, including the Martin race, a species whose diplomatic ties and cultural exchanges with humanity ran deep, found themselves questioning their own loyalty to the Council. To them, humanity's decision had an undeniable logic. If the Council was unwilling to stand up for justice, what did that mean for the safety and integrity of all its members? Quietly, Martin leaders reached out to humanity, expressing that they, too, were considering their options. In private communications, other species hinted at similar concerns, their trust in the Council shaken by its failure to protect even its most respected diplomats. Humanity's stance had set off an undercurrent of unrest that the Council was struggling to ignore. Back at the Council, the realization of humanity's military readiness sparked unease. The humans had left no room for ambiguity. Their defenses were clear and organized, signaling their refusal to be intimidated or constrained. For the first time, the Council felt the full weight of humanity's autonomy. Talk of containment measures began to circulate in the Council chambers, with a few species pushing to monitor humanity, fearing their growing influence and military strength. These factions, once dismissive of humanity as a newcomer, now saw them as a destabilizing force that needed managing. Yet, more cautious voices reminded the Council of the risk. Any attempt to antagonize humanity would likely ignite a conflict none of them were prepared to handle. As days passed, it became apparent to the Council that any military move against humanity would be disastrous. Humanity's organized mobilization, paired with their staunch commitment to self-defense, showed the galaxy that they were fully prepared to protect their interests. Even the most hawkish Council members recognized that direct confrontation would be unwise. Humanity had become more than just a new member. They had demonstrated strength, unity, and resolve that demanded respect. Humanity's decision to leave the Council had been loud and decisive, but their final message to the galaxy would be even louder. In a sweeping broadcast, they addressed the galaxy at large, transmitting to every corner of Council space. Humanity's voice was one of calm but unyielding defiance. They had not left the Council to sow chaos, they explained, but to stand for principles they held dear, principles that could not be bought or traded away. General Kimura, a symbol of humanity's unity and unbreakable spirit, delivered the address. Her words were precise and unwavering, a reflection of the values that had driven humanity's actions from the beginning. She spoke directly to the people of other species as much as to their leaders, laying out the failures that had led humanity to this point. She described the Council's refusal to seek justice for Ambassador Hayes as a betrayal of the most basic tenets of peace. "We are here to tell you that justice will not be ignored," she said. "If the Council will not protect its own, then humanity will protect its own, and any who stand with us, without hesitation." Kimura's message continued, detailing humanity's new approach. They would no longer place their faith in a system that had shown it valued order over truth, power over fairness. Humanity would act as their own guardians, extending this protection to those who shared their values. She assured those watching that humanity was not closing its doors to diplomacy, but rather committing to alliances based on mutual respect and accountability, principles the Council had failed to uphold. The galaxy's response was immediate and electric. Messages and broadcasts flowed in from Council planets, starports, and colonies, where humanity's message resonated with those who had long suspected the Council's frailty. Among species large and small, whispers began to circulate. Humanity had done what others only dreamed of. They had confronted the galaxy's most powerful entity and refused to accept its hypocrisy. For those who had grown frustrated with the Council's empty platitudes, humanity's stance was not only inspiring, but empowering. Some species quietly approached humanity, inquiring about potential alliances or mutual defense pacts. Not all of these were formal communications. Many were individual diplomats, researchers, and even citizens of other worlds expressing admiration or solidarity. The Martins, humanity's closest allies, were the first to consider a formal break from the Council, inspired by humanity's courage. For the Martins, who had long struggled to trust the Council's opaque policies, humanity's decisive stand became a beacon of hope for a different kind of alliance, one built on shared values rather than control. But not everyone viewed humanity's actions as a noble stand. In the Council's inner chambers, some members met in secret, voicing fears that humanity's growing independence would destabilize the galaxy. They worried that other species might follow humanity's lead, fragmenting the Council's power. Some even spoke of humanity as a threat, a species whose ideals and unyielding spirit could spark rebellions across Council territories. The factions that had dismissed humanity now felt their absence acutely, and they feared a galaxy where humanity's example might inspire others to question Council authority. Kimura's message, however, was clear. Humanity would defend itself, but it would not seek conflict for conflict's sake. "Our commitment is to peace," she said, "but a peace that is just and fair, not one that masks corruption or hides behind power. We invite any who share these principles to stand with us. Together, we can build alliances that transcend the boundaries of the Council, bound by respect and a shared dedication to truth." Kimura's words echoed, igniting a spark among Council worlds. People began to talk openly about the potential for alliances outside the Council, and the idea of a galaxy organized not by a central governing body, but by a network of independent yet aligned worlds grew in appeal. Some species even saw in humanity's vision the opportunity to build a new order from the ground up, one that would learn from the Council's failures and prioritize accountability and cooperation. As the broadcast concluded, humanity stood more united than ever, a force with a clear purpose and a newfound freedom. Their commitment to justice, their willingness to walk away from power rather than compromise their principles. These values left an indelible impact on every species that watched. Humanity had shown that they would rather be isolated than be complicit in a broken system, and in that defiance, they had found strength. Humanity's new alliances were still informal, but the foundations had been laid. The Council, meanwhile, faced a new and uncertain future. Humanity's departure had revealed fractures that could no longer be ignored, and the galaxy itself seemed poised at a crossroads. Would the Council adapt and learn, Or would other species choose to follow humanity's example, creating a more scattered but principled network of alliances? In the end, humanity had not just left the council. They had left a question hanging in the stars, one that every species would have to answer for itself. Would they be content with a system that valued power over justice, or would they choose a path that, while uncertain, held the promise of true equality and respect? The galaxy watched as humanity prepared for the next chapter, and the whispers grew louder among those willing to envision a future inspired by humanity's courage.